Hey everybody, this is MaDonna from Mad Bees Quilt and Sew. Oh, where am I at today? It's Monday, isn't it? So I am here and it is Women's Day today, which is a great day for each one of us to do something nice for somebody in your life. And you know what? Just do something nice today. Be kind to somebody. Open a door for somebody that's walking in. Just do that extra little gesture that makes somebody feel special today. So today I'm going to share with you the block that we're working on. So you know we're working from the Alex Anderson quilting book. And one of the things I want to share is how I do not use water in my iron and why I don't, okay? I don't care for water in my iron because one, I don't want water stagnant sitting in my iron. I don't like that dirt and all that sediment that's in your water to come out. And two, I don't like that it doesn't come out in a uniform a mist across your fabric. So it really feels much more realistic, and a good way to use it is with a spray bottle. But the only time I really use a spray bottle is when I'm putting on my best press to put it on as I'm pre-doing my fabrics. And two, I use the spray bottle for when I want to actually finish the project. So if I want it to lay that much flatter because I'm done with it, then I'll use some moisture on it. So one of the things that happens when we spray or when we use the steam in our iron is it seems to come out kind of spotty. So then it stretches in those places. And so what I'm going to show you today is two squares here. Both of them are exactly the same size, or as close as I can be. I hate to use the word exact because if you know me, it's not true. Okay, so they're pretty gosh darn close to the same size square. I can dry press the one, and I can just press it, and it's going to stay the shape it is. If I use moisture on it, and even with my fine mist, I get it wet, I put my hand across it, I can already start to change the shape of this. So now, just with that little bit, I've already elongated it. So it is no longer square. Then I take my iron and go across it, and I press it, and watch what happens. As soon as I'm done with that, I've already changed the shape of that. I've already got an extra 1/8 of an inch up at that top. So what would happen for most of us is we'd take our ruler and we'd square that off. Well, that's actually fabric that should have been in that block. And then, if you can see, I'm still matching over here too, okay? So just so you see, I didn't lose that match. I've just gained inches over there. So now I've put it into a block, and guess what? I go again and I press it, and this time, oh, I gotta get that, it's not laying flat for me. Oh, I gotta press that some more. And now I've got a wave in the top, and I've got a point sticking out. So now I've got two pieces to trim up. And I can work this fabric and I can stretch this quite a bit when it's wet. I can make it curl, especially when we're on that bias. How many of you, when you press a seam, you press it closed and then you grab it and you hang on to it and you press it this way so that way you can get it to lay down nice? And look at that wave I've created there. Well, look at my block now. Look at how much I'm going to be squaring up. That's a lot. And I have a wave up here that's now going to be, I've got this really odd shape now. Let's put it on top of the other one, the other way. I have totally distorted that fabric. So I squared up there, I square up here. I'm down quite a bit in my fabric. So that's why I don't press with water. When I've finished my block and I want to set my seam, then I will use it. So I do get customers who ask me quite often about putting distilled water in their iron because that's a better way to do it. It's going to be cleaner water going in. There's an exception though. Distilled water is actually water that is the evaporation. So you know when you boil water and you see all that steam coming up, they collect that steam and they put it into a bottle, and that's distilled water, okay? That's super clean, but it also takes a higher temperature to be able to get it to steam the next time because there's no minerals left in it. Minerals help to be able to steam things faster. So regular tap water, if you're going to use it in a spray bottle, would be the option I'd go with. If I'm trying to get a wrinkle out of something, I am going to give it a good mist. I'm going to use this tool as my iron and just pat that moisture into the fabric and then let it sit and dry. You'll be amazed at how that wrinkle comes out. If I start ironing it, I'm just reinforcing that wrinkle. So that's my tidbits to start off for today. I'm going to head over to the table and show you some blocks. So I can't see anybody today. I am just on the phone, so I don't even know what I look like today. Hopefully there's not a horn on top of my head. But
you look great.
I look great. Okay, thank you, Deanna. I'm going to show you the block that I completed from last week. And we were supposed to complete 3 blocks. And if you know anything about me, they'll be done next week, okay? Just a crazy week this week. So I hope you got 3 blocks done. And it should be a square. So give it a good measure and make sure that it's square. And then set that one aside. So that was last week's. This week we're going to work on our square dance block and our friendship star block. So this pattern designer, Alex, has done a friendship star with using half square triangles, and I will do it exactly the same way. The reason that I started off today's class with pressing is because our first square in square dance is actually a square. So we've got our square, and it's nice square shape. But if I were to take this and start pressing it with steam, I could lose that square shape. So that's why I started with steam today, okay? So the first thing what we're going to do is, on this one, we're going to do 2 rectangles. What do I have here? Matching red rectangles, 2 inches. So we're going to use 2-inch strips. And, okay, I think we'll start again. Okay. It's 3.5 inches. So we're going to add our 2 pieces at 3.5 to either side. Give it a press, and then we're going to be adding our top and bottom. So we've got a real nice simple block here, but with great effect. So I have got my seams lined up. I'm going to move over so my nose is in front of my needle. I'm going to make sure that I'm at it just inside my 1/4 inch. Give myself a couple stitches before I get started. So I've got my fabric just slightly forward. Left hand foot for sewing. And away we go. I forgot scissors today. You know what? Every time I do this class, I forget something. Actually, where's my rainbow bright box? I don't see it.
I haven't seen that in a minute.
It must be in the other room. Okay, I've now got 2 sides on. You can stay there. I'm going to pop up and just give this a press. I'll be right back, everybody. There's scissors in there. It's either that or My Little Pony, I'm not sure. So I called this my Rainbow Bright box. This is kind of my travel around the store box. In it I have stickers that I use for marking, but I also have little bitty scissors in here that are great for trimming threads. So I've given myself that extra little bit at the beginning and at the end, so I wind up with my little twist on them. Look how nice that twist is. Isn't that great? See, that's going to hold that all secure for us. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to put my next piece on top, and I've already cut it at the 6.5 inch length, which means it should match exactly, and guess what? It does not. It is not exact. Okay? So if you can see, I am just a little bit off. So I have 2 choices. My choice number 1 is to take off both ends and make that work. My choice number 2 is just to slightly give this a little bit of a tug as I'm pulling it through. So the rule of thumb is to put baggy on the bottom. So I know that right now, the larger piece of fabric is the top piece. And you can see there's actually just a little bit of a belly in there. When I pull on it, I can flatten it out. anytime I have a little bit of fullness, I want it on the bottom because the feed dogs will pull it through. I try never to pull on these outside pieces. I want to give any tension I'm going to do in the center, because if I do it out here, you'll wind up with outside edges that kind of wave a little bit. So I'm going to set this underneath my machine. I'm going to match up the top. Now, many of you would choose to put a pin right here, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to just give this a nice sew to there. I'm going to sew right up to my seam there. So that means when I sewed my 1/4 inch, I might have been just a little bit heavy on it, so I didn't watch my foot as much as I wanted, or it may mean that when I pressed, I didn't press quite as hard as I should have. So I've gotten all the way to my seam. Now I'm going to put a little bit of tension on that center piece and make sure that my tips match up, and they match up nicely. So I'm just going to put a little bit of tension on that center. And when I get right to that next seam, I'm not going to pull on it at all. I'm just going to feed that in. And I'm super happy with the way that that finished up. My edges match beautifully. And it doesn't look like I've got a lot of excess fabric in that center. So we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. And we're going to lay down our strip. We're going to make sure it's nice and square at the top. We're going to make sure it's nice and square at the bottom. I can see I still have just a hair of bagginess there. So I'm going to turn that to the feed dogs. So baggy on the bottom. Your feed dogs will help to fill that in. Give myself a couple stitches to get started. Once I get to the center portion, I'm going to give it just a little bit of tension on it to make sure that my bottom matches up, and it's really that center that I'm putting tension on. Still keeping it straight, feeding into the feed dogs. So I'm almost using my finger as my pin, if that makes sense. Once I'm to my seam there, I make sure I'm lined up nicely.
So you just pulled it tight at the bottom.
I pulled it tight in between here and here. Okay, so I put a little bit of tension right there. And you can see it almost ripples just a little bit right there. And on this side, you can nicely see it, okay? But once I press that, that's going to press out because I've distributed it evenly. But I don't have that fullness out in these outside edges because I don't want them to look wavy. I want them to still lay nicely. But that way I can square up my block without cutting off part of it. I know I cut that piece correctly. So if I cut that shorter, now that block is going to be smaller, and that's not what we want. Okay, so I'm going to go give this a press, and again, I'm going to press it to the dark fabric. So I'm going to set my seam on both of them. I'm going to pop this open and give it a little bit of a press. And I'm going to set my seam, pop this open, and give it a press. Now this is pretty red fabric, so you can almost see how this iron changes the color. And I'm not sure if on your screens at home you can see that, but it actually darkens it up for a second. And once it cools off, it'll go back to its lighter color. But reds do that a lot. Don't be fearful of that. Okay? So that one is done. Whew, we needed an easy one this week, didn't we? Because now we start the more challenging one. Okay, so this is actually only challenging because you have to do the layout, and layouts can sometimes stress me out. This is called a friendship star. We actually will be making 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. Yes, they're in a row on the right-hand side of this quilt. Okay, so let's start with, which one do I want to start with? Let's start with a different color. I'm tired of doing red. Do any of you ever have that where you're just tired of a color? I bet these go with this. How about that? Okay. Okay, so friendship star. So the layout is the first tricky part. So my light is going to be the little flowers. I'm going to set that down. And then I have 4 corners that will be solids on this block. So I'm going to set those into place. It's hard to tell the front from the back. So this is easier than that one we did a couple weeks ago. Remember when I just could not get it laid out right, Deanna? It was pretty funny. You know, we all have to have those days. We're going to go right at the top here. We're going to go right at the side here. We're going to go to the opposite angle this way. So this one's on an angle this way. This one's going to be on an angle this way. And then we're going to go to this side right here. And there's our friendship star. So now we're just going to add the rest of our little blue pieces right into those. Okay, so half square triangles. Some people love them, some people hate them. I don't mind them. I do have a super simple trick on how to get them to line up better for you. So if you think about it, we're going to sew right sides together. So on my triangles, I'm going to take one side of it and press it right sides together in one direction. And so here we go. Okay, so I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to press it right sides together, matching up my corners, and I'm going to give this a really nice firm press there. Okay, so now I'm going to set that down and you're going to see it has like a little divot in there. Can we see it, Deanna? Okay, so it's got a nice little divot. I'm going to take the other one, the right side of it, I'm going to pretend like I'm laying it on top of it. But this time when I press it, I'm going to press it so I've got the right side on the outside, and I'm going to press it using my fingers again. Give it a good firm press. Don't stretch on it, just press it. Now I can lay that little point right into that one there, and look at, they line up so nicely. If I'm afraid of them moving too much underneath the sewing machine, I can also just go to the ironing board and press them together. It's amazing how nice they stick together then. But that is what I do instead of a pin. It gives me a really nice marking, and one sits inside of the other one so very nicely. So then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. Again, I need to watch that I'm sewing just shy of that 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so those of you that have a problem with your sewing machine wanting to pull your fabric down and in, that is a big problem when you're working on points. But if you think about this, we're not actually going to be sewing at that point. We're going to be sewing over here. We're a 1/4 of an inch over to the side. So when we put this underneath here, we're going to set down our machine for a second. Okay, and if you look, we should actually be sewing right here. It's not that tip. That tip isn't actually going underneath your feed, into your feed there. It's on the side here. So we're going to line up there and see it's way over there. So what we can do is back it off for a second. Give ourselves 3 stitches. Okay, now pick everything up. Pick up your lifter, your foot lifter. Set this into there. Set this down. And now go ahead and start sewing. We've already created those 3 little stitches that we like. Nothing got sucked in. I feel like I'm a little bit wide, so I'm just going to come over just a hair. So remember that twist we've talked about before? That's what I've taken care of. Okay, so now when we look, we've got that nice little twist really tight right there because we did those 3 stitches. There's another technique out there that's called putting a leader in. And what a leader is, I'm going to sew onto a leader for you, is any junk piece of fabric. Okay, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. This is just a piece of salvage. Many people do this. They'll sew a straight line, and it doesn't even have to be straight. They'll sew. Once they get to here, some people will start right away with their next piece. They call it chain piecing, and I'll do 3 stitches, and then we start. Okay, so we're going to do our technique here. We're going to press it. Now I don't typically press this with an iron because I don't want to stretch it. So I don't take it to the iron board. I've got a nice divot there. This one goes with the wrong sides together. So right sides together on one, wrong side together on the other. Give it a nice press. I'm able to open it up, nest it right inside of there. Line it up so it looks really nice, but they really nest together then for you. Everything fits together. Now I'm going to do exactly the same. So you can use the leader or you can just sew yourself a couple of little stitches first. Line that up and away we go. We have 4 of those to do, and then we'll put our rows together. Now, if you try to feed the next one into here really fast, sometimes it wants to go a little bit crazy, and I'll show you. I always pick up my presser foot when I'm feeding another piece of fabric in, just because I don't like it pushing that top little piece. Fold it in half again with the wrong sides together on the second piece. Get it all lined up nice. Give it a finger press. Set it in there. Let it pop open. They should match nicely. How are we doing with people watching us today, Deanna?
Oh, it's been going up and down.
Up and down, uh-oh.
Yes. And some people are catching us at the end of their lunch breaks and such.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Well, hopefully you remember you can watch it whenever. We do, you can catch us on YouTube or right through here again. Tomorrow night's Comment Sold, though, so you got to catch us on Comment Sold, because who knows what I'll have then. Okay, so I'm ready to go again, and I can see right where that tip is of the previous star. I have seen many people like overlap those, like so. I personally don't like that. When I go to trim them apart, it seems like I wind up hitting a point or hitting a tip. So I would actually sew this a little bit further. So there's my 1/4 inch mark on the inside there. I'm going to sew it till it goes all the way there. Now I'm going to put my next piece in. And I think it looks just a slight bit off there. And under we go. A couple of stitches, you can see it's under the feed dogs though, and there we go. So next week we do flying geese, and many people think that that's probably one of the hardest ones. I'll give you some tips and tricks so you can get through that. It's not any harder than what we're sewing today. I always hear people whining about flying geese. Wah, 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 wah.
Maybe it's because geese have such a bad rep in general, you know?
Maybe. And when they're flying, it's even worse, huh? Oh, we got a couple more stitches to do there. There's my tip. There we go. So see how I've got a nice gap in between there the way that I typically do it, whereas this here, it's pretty tight. So then I've got to be really careful. There's my leader that I'm cutting off. I'm going to cut right up next to it. Here was my first one. So on this block now, we're going to always press to the dark, okay? So which is the dark on here? I would go with the light blue. Isn't that scary to think that that's the dark? We're going to press to the light blue, okay? When we come back over to here, come on over, Deanna. I like to cut these little, I call them dog ears, or that's what they're called, is dog ears. I would cut those off. This block should match that block, which it does. Yay, it's a good day. We will sew a row across, a row across, a row across, and our block is done. Okay? I hope everybody had a good time today. I hope you learned a few things, and happy Monday. Be kind to each other today, and I will see you next week, Monday, and we will be doing flying geese. Bye now.